You're listening to Unlocking Our Sound Heritage and Childhood Games and Memories, brought to you by Manx National Heritage, the charity responsible for the Isle of Man's natural and cultural heritage. The sound recordings you'll hear today and throughout this series on Manx Radio are part of a unique collection of around 600 sound recordings, digitised from the Manx National Heritage Sound Archive and available now online for the first time. The team at Manx National Heritage hope you enjoy eavesdropping on the voice clips we've chosen from the nation's sound archive, all of which can be listened to in full at imuseum.im.
Before video games and mobile phones, children really had to amuse themselves. Let's hear from Mrs Brookfield of Cregneash, interviewed by Manx National Heritage curator Yvonne Cresswell in 2008.
I just loved it.
I was going to ask sort of what sorts of games or what sorts of things you did to sort of occupy yourself. And
Well, obviously, when my cousin used to come up as well, I mean, the games were like playing ticky,
yes.
you know, and it were very simple things. We just as I say, my grandma used to give me a tin of buttons, and I used to play with these buttons, and I used to play shop.
Right.
And as I say, she used to have tables outside, and I'd play shop.
Right.
And I can remember going down to Perwick Bay, which we loved. We loved walking down to Perwick, and I'd play shops.
Right.
With all the stones and, you know, all the pebbles and things there. And so it was really simple. We played cards and snakes and ladders and all those sort of little games. But you were inclined to sort of go to bed very early. You were very strict with times, you know, when you were in those days, when you were under the 10, you were in bed by 7 o'clock.
In 1991, Mr Kelly of Garwick recorded some of his childhood memories, and it seems it was always hot in the summer and snow and ice were plentiful in winter.
But looking back from a child's point of view, as I am doing, say from the age of 4.5 or 5, when I think the memory starts to become retentive, there were good days. My word, we had long, hot, warm summers. We had snow in the winter. We could sledge down fields in Buldrine that are now covered with bungalows, houses, all colours and descriptions. Our sledges were usually a couple of old battle staves with a box nailed on them. And then during the winter we could always depend on getting ice on Garwick Lake and skating on it. Every winter. By word, that doesn't happen now. We may get the long summers, but they're not hot. And the winters draggy, wet, but there's no snow and no ice like there used to be. I don't know what's happened to the season. But still, they went along very pleasantly for children in those days. We had plenty of good fun, and things moved at an easy pace. Well, in those days we could race 3 abreast down Buldrine Hill on bogies. Imagine doing that today. You'd be mangled to death with hundreds of motor cars as about. That's another thing. A motor car was a big event. We'd run across the field to see a motor car. But not to the old Manx people. The motor cars weren't a big event. They used to call them the Mullina's Yowl, the mill of the devil, because they never saw anything faster on the road than the old threshing mill, belting along maybe on the flat at about 7 miles an hour and uphill at about 2, with black smoke belching from the funnel, towing the threshing mill behind the steam engine and maybe a press behind that again, travelling from farm to farm. But the sight of a Model T Ford throwing up dust from the roads on a dry day and splashing up water from the puddles on a wet day and belting along at about 20 or 25 miles an hour, clattering and banging, That was almost an obscenity to the old Manx people.
John Watterson of Port St Mary recalls some of his childhood games.
After school and on Saturdays we went to the rocks to fish bulkies, what some older men called bulkions. Occasionally we caught bollens, which we brought home to cook for the cat. We used to have iron hoops as well, and crooks, which we rolled along the streets and sometimes to Calby and back. The hoops were made at the smithy down below at Port Burke. Mr. Hashy Castaigne was the name of the smith, and when the hoop broke we went back to him to have it spliced. An old retired captain, Mr. John Crow, bought me my first hoop. As time went on, motor traffic appeared on the roads, and the police stopped us playing with our hoops.
Levi Gregor of Peel also remembers playing with tops and iron hoops made by the local blacksmith.
Did they play with tops in your time?
Oh yes, the top, yes.
The top and whip?
Whip, yes. Oh yes, the top and whip was a great game too. But they wanted that mostly on the cement pad.
Mm. Did they make them or buy them?
Oh, they bought them. Oh, they bought the top. They could make a whip, but they had to buy the top.
What about hoops? Iron hoops, did they play with those?
Yes. Oh, iron hoop was always going.
Where did they get those?
From the blacksmith.
He'd make them?
Yeah. Oh, the blacksmith always made.
How much for, I wonder?
Oh, well, they weren't made much, maybe above the two.
Were they? But once you'd bought one, you'd have it forever.
Oh, a long time. Oh, sometimes it would break, if you were going hard down the hill and bounce at the wall, it would break.
What did you hit it with?
Oh, they always had that thing, a crook on it. The blacksmith would put a crook on,
Supplied with it.
Yes.
Not all children's games were entirely innocent, though. In this clip from 2010, Eddie Lowy, former member of the Legislative Council, tells us some of the mischief he got up to at his granny's house when he was a boy. And just to explain before we listen, gilpin are a type of small fish.
Fishing for gilpin. So, and the last story about the gilpin, I just mentioned it to the chairman before, was I must have been responsible for Granny Shimon having a very short life, because there must have been an artistic streak in me somewhere, because even the cats wouldn't eat gilpin, you know, little fish like this, and the cat wouldn't even eat them. Brought them home. What do I do with this couple of dozen fish I had? So I went to the Five Egg and arranged them in a very artistic way round the seat. Now, Grandma Shimon, of course, was one of these old ladies. She had a skirt right down to her ankles and lace boots. And of course, when she went, and part of the evening, of course, was spent by the ladies. We didn't have what's that advert for with the little puppy that Andrex, it goes forever and ever and ever. Half of the evening, no television, only the posh had a radio. They would cut squares out of the newspapers and put strings round for the loo. That was part of the evening entertainment. It's a bit like lighting a fire. You always find the good bits, don't you? That you miss first time round when you screw them up to put them on the fire. But anyway, they had so my granny, of course, was going into the loo, and she went backwards, of course, didn't loo, sat down. I can still hear the screams, and I decided it would be better that Lowy left home, so I abandoned ship for 4 hours. Granny forgive me, by the way, but I don't think my mother ever did.
Has a monkey ever visited your house? Gladys Neal, interviewed in 1990, remembers meeting a monkey belonging to the hurdy-gurdy man.
What about the monkey, Valerio? Oh, he used to come up sometimes.
The hurdy-gurdy, wasn't it?
Yes.
Did he come out to the farm?
Yes. And come in and play.
Did he?
Yes, and the monkey with him.
Was it good monkey?
Yes, it was really.
Used to feed it?
Yes, nuts. Yes, nuts for the monkey. I don't know anything else, I'm sure I don't. Can't think of anything.
What's the earliest thing you can remember ever in your life?
Earliest
The
thing?
very first thing you can ever remember?
Oh, lost. Help me, Mama.
Remember being a baby?
No. No. I don't remember an awful lot of being little end on the road.
Yeah.
The first thing I can remember is out on the gate, looking at the children going up and down to school, and your Auntie Nellie, of course, I saw her go past, and we got quite pally. To think of it in those days, and that went right through our life, you know.
You were only a little girl?
Yes.
At
She
6?
was too. Yes. Couldn't have been 6, I'd have been to school.
4.
5.
During the Second World War, everyday life for some children on the Isle of Man was affected by the internment camps, as Joyce Corlett tells us in this clip from a 1998 interview.
That time we lived in Bradda, which is at the top of Port Erin, and I can remember from a very early age having a little identity card, and we had barbed wire barriers at the end of Bradda.
Yes.
And another one where Kringle and Cool is now, just as you come into Port Erin, and you had to show your little ID card. Even when we went down to church on a Sunday night, and your next door neighbour was the ARP fellow in the little box, you still had to show your card. And I mean, in those days we walked everywhere. I think childhood was far happier than today's are. There were none of the fears.
No.
In a small area like this. Everybody knew everybody else. Somebody called to take you to Sunday school, somebody called to take you to school. You know, and there really were no worries. Everybody was quite happy leaving you in charge of the brothers next door, and they knew they would bring me home from Sunday school.
And of course, rationing affected the availability of sweets and treats, as Joyce remembers now.
I was born in 1938. So the only thing that sticks in my mind about rationing were the sweet rations.
Oh, right.
And I can always remember I used to come, I went to the little school at the Four Roads, which is still Russian Junior School.
Yes.
And I used to meet my mother in Port Erin. We'd do the shopping. We'd meet my father from work, and then we'd help to carry it back up to Bradda because we had no cars in those days.
No.
And that was it. There was a sweet shop called Mrs. Harrison's, and that was the port of call on a Friday night with the coupons and the pocket money to pick up the sweets from Mrs. Harrison's. So really, those are my main
memories of
the war years, because I really wouldn't.
You were too young
take much in, I suppose, till I was 4 or 5 anyway.
No.
School days are allegedly the best days of your life. So next, let's hear some school memories. Gladys Neal went to Baldwin School. In this clip, she tells us about her daily walk to school and some of the games she played in the playground.
How long did it take you to walk normally?
To school, about 20 minutes. About 20 minutes. Of course, it would take us longer. We'd be playing all the way, you see. Not anxious to get there. Put it that way.
What sort of games would you be playing with? Was there anything in particular?
Oh, just fooling about, the lot of us. There'd be boys and girls, quite a few of us, going at the same time. And, what now?
Can you remember any games you played at school?
Not only skipping, that's all.
Was it?
Yes, and leap the frog. Oh, and one time they got us cricket bat and ball, but we didn't do much with that, really. The girls didn't, anyway.
Can you remember them playing camag?
Pardon?
Can you remember them playing camag?
What was that?
Sort of hockey with a crooked stick.
No, we didn't get that far.
Did the boys and girls keep separate in the playground?
Yes, yes. They had a separate playground from us.
In the next clip, we're with Gladys again, as she talks about going to school in all weathers and learning to write.
Would you still go to school if the weather was bad?
Yes. Weather didn't stop us. We'd go in the snow. The rain wouldn't stop us. No. Oh, we were made to go. Yes, get off to school.
Did you ever play truant?
No. 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 I might have felt like it many a time, but I knew what would happen if I did.
What did you learn to write with? Slates?
Slates, yes. And then pens.
Yeah.
At Baldwin School. Pen and ink.
The inkwells in the desks?
What?
Inkwells in the desks?
Yes, yes.
Did you argue with your parents about the shoes you wore to school? Gladys did, as she tells us next. And you might be surprised to learn that the disagreement wasn't about high heels or fashion.
What did you not say?
My shoes?
Yes.
Well,
Go on, tell the tale.
Well, that's only when I wanted to go to school barefoot, and my father wouldn't allow us, because they said people would say it was too mean to buy us shoes.
But other children did.
Used to take them up and hide them behind the hedge and walk on to school and then pick them up when we come back. He was none the wiser. Good job too, we'd have got it.
But were there children who didn't have shoes?
Yes, there were some, one or two. Not very many though, Norma.
No.
No, there might have been one or two of them.
Any with hardly any clothes? Poor clothes?
No, not too bad really.
What was the attraction of going barefoot?
Well, because the others were doing it.
And let's just stay with Gladys for one more story, as she tells us how some boys turned the tables on the schoolmaster.
Yes. And another day, this is what she wants. 3 of the boys took a pick into the headmaster and they stayed late. During dinner hour, they didn't come back in time. When they did come back, the master was going to give them a wallop. But instead of that, they turned the master over the desk and they gave to him. They had sticks put down inside their waistcoat. I'll never forget that day.
Did they get into trouble for that?
It's never mentioned, and it wasn't mentioned in the thing at the museum.
It wasn't in the school logbook?
Never a word about it.
John Watterson of Port St Mary remembers his early school days going right back to the First World War.
I can remember starting school at the Infants. There were 2 lady teachers there, Miss Shansbury and Miss Castaigne. We learned the alphabet and sang some nursery rhymes in the lower classes, and in the higher classes we were taught to count, do sums, and taught to sing little songs which she wrote on the blackboard. The 1914-18 war was on, and often we were let out of school sometimes to see the aeroplanes.
Remaining at school until the age of 16 is a relatively recent concept. Herbert Watterson, in this clip from a 2008 evening with Peel Heritage Trust, recalls leaving school at 14.
No, I would think immediately after the war. I started work in 1945 at the age of about 14 and a half, or even earlier than that, a month or two earlier. There was a vacancy in the post office in Peel. I became a telegram boy, probably one of the last telegram boys, wearing the famous pillbox hat. Shortly after that, the school leaving age went up, and of course, children didn't leave school till 16, and the rank then became junior postman rather than telegram boys. I and a lad called Lionel Cottier, who came in a year after me, were telegram boys for 4 years, and of course at that time telephones were far and few between, and so people any urgent messages were sent by telegram.
Andy Jockin left school even earlier, at the age of 12, as he tells Charles Clark in this 1950 interview.
Now, in your younger days, you were you served your time as a blacksmith, didn't you?
Yes.
Or in the first place, where did you go to school?
What?
Where did you go to school?
Oh, me?
Aye.
Derby.
At Derby?
Aye.
At what age were you started? Where did you start school?
To go to school? I went to school and I was knocked from school in August. I was 12 in April and I was knocked off in August, and I swung then a 9-pound hammer over my head.
You did? Well,
and our hours was short. We started work at 6 in the morning and we knocked off at 8 at night.
No 44-hour week?
There was no, what?
So,
no 44-hour week. You're lucky if you got off at 4 o'clock on Saturday. And when you'd start work in the morning, you could hang your clothes up, coat and waistcoat, and you needn't look for them till after 8 at night.
Going hard all the time?
Going hard all the time.
After leaving school, this Laxey lady, interviewed in 1998, remembers that there were not as many opportunities for girls. Sadly, we don't know her name, but we do know that she was born in 1932. If you recognise her, please let us know.
So you stayed on the island?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I just worked in my parents' shop.
All right.
Yes. I did a bit of everything.
Did you?
Baker.
Yes.
Butcher, baker.
Yeah. Oh.
Grocer.
Yes.
All comes in handy.
It does indeed, yes.
Yes, it's quite a good grounding.
It
really.
is, yes.
Yeah. I think there wasn't the scope for girls then. I mean, there were shops and offices, but not like there is today.
No. Oh, definitely
no.
not.
No,
there was no opportunity.
And if you did go to university or college, it was usually with a view to being a teacher. And if teaching wasn't for you, there wasn't a lot of point in going to college or university.
No.
Whereas now they go for
everything.
All sorts of things.
That's
yes.
right, yes. The world's their oyster now.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. Which is great.
Yes.
Which is great, you know.
Let's end with a rather magical evocation of home life as a child. Back to Eddie Lowy, MLC, as he gives us a beautiful description of his granny's house.
My granny, the house, and I've got a photograph of the house, you very kindly let me in, and I had scones. And the place, believe it or not, still retains its magic. When you went in, you had to stoop to get in, got in. Only one room downstairs, really, and there was a grandfather clock going tick-tock, tick-tock, and then another clock on the mantelpiece going tick-tock, tick-tock. It was like music, and on the fire, which always glowed, lots of slack on it, was this kettle. It was always singing. Don't know, it was magic, really. I mean, if you wanted a cup of tea, all you had to do was pull it out over, put the poker in, give it a stir, flames were up. You had it quicker than an electric kettle. It's a fact. It's a fact. And so I can remember the smell and the feel of that building as if it was yesterday. And when I went in 5 years ago, it was immediate. It wrapped itself around me. A bit like Peel, it wraps itself around you. So I've got magical moments of Granny Quine's house. I remember my granny dying. And the other nice thing, well, nice in the sense that I can remember these things and it was pleasure.
I can just hear that kettle singing away. Thanks for listening to Childhood Games and Memories. Join us next time for Voices from the Victorians, or in the meantime, listen again to the podcast available on the Manx Radio website. You can visit imuseum.im and click on Unlocking Our Sound Heritage to listen to these and many more sound recordings from the Manx National Heritage Sound Archive. To find out more about the charity Manx National Heritage and how you can support us, visit our website manxnationalheritage.im or join us on Facebook.